hero, boy. You're going after Dr. E all by yourself.
Yeah. You're not going without backup, Arthur. Forget it.
Yeah, I bet you didn't even pack a med kit.
I'm coming too. Guys, it won't be like last time, I promise.
Okay, plan A it is. I'll take point, make the rendezvous solo. Aoi, Amir, Quincy on backup. Letty, you and Eleanor hold the fort here. Keep the Jennies running. Saddle up. Let's ride the devil down.
Hey all, Siege here, and today I wanted to take a deeper look into the Hex, the newest faction we're to be introduced to in the Warframe 1999 update, as well as an interesting development that may hold more significance than it appears. Arthur's Pager, our post-prologue reward presented at the end of Lotus Eaters, has, incredibly enough, reached out a couple of times now, with no reason to assume at this point it won't continue to do so. And maybe I'm mistaken, but it belonging to Arthur, not Entrati, is more significant than I may have initially given it credit for. My initial thoughts when we first received it was, if we have this, whose is he using to send us the message? Clearly not Eleanor's phone, if nothing else. Oh. Regardless, I think the aspect that speaks volumes here is the interdimensionality of this device. Being able to transmit a message through millennia, multiple dimensions, or perhaps a combination of both. And I believe the first question to be asked here should be, what kind of data plans do they have in the Warframe universe? Because I'd say this one, yeah, it seems pretty solid. All jokes aside, these messages from the past, while on the surface offering us fairly mundane text, open up a lot of questions, even more intriguing than what it costs to use Entrati Mobile, and should begin to flesh out the sheer intelligence that Entrati, the Void, or most likely a combination of both, in some way have achieved, and may also ask us to maybe even reconsider what we know about the villain we're dealing with. I believe the prevailing idea, at least at the moment, is that Albrecht was successful in escaping the Void after his initial incident with the Indifference, and for all intents and purposes, the current timeline after the fact as a completely separate entity from this doppelganger, something we're meant to accept as the truth from the dialogue and whispers in the walls.
If I had remained in the Deimos laboratory, Lloyd would never have been safe from him. You know of what I speak. And so I retreated to the only place in history where that entity could not easily follow, to draw his greedy eye away from Lloyd. Tenno, I require your trust. Craft the little curio whose blueprints you will find in the computer's memory. Complete the Kalimos sequence. Repair. Rebuild. When the time is right, find me.
But we are also given an equal or even greater amount of subtle foreshadowing, insinuating or even outright showing us, or telling us,
I never spoke of him, that man, trapped in the wall. And while there have been countless souls who have followed me through with their light skippers and field wave skins and very-eyed instruments, not a single one ever saw him. Me. And so it is that I will not take the Kuva now, or ever again. This is the last skin I'm in. Because of this idea, that I cannot be sure that in all that smoked commotion, in all that panic and fear, in that bending light and blinding dark, was it I who escaped? Or the other?
The same cursed question still pursued me as it had before. Was I, even now, trapped in the rictus of the wall?
Albrecht rarely smiled after his return from the void. And never like that. I smashed the casket for nothing! It followed him anyway!
That this might not be the case. We have to consider this void entity is Entradi in some form or function, be it in memory.
An old name, unspoken in the centuries since my mother reared me. A soft hiss, soothing as a viper's gaze. Little Bengal.
Intelligence? Or both? And given what we've witnessed so far, that it seems to be one step ahead of us whether we realize it or not. And in that, would it not be remiss to consider we're being led into place once again, just like during the New War, with unfortunately much of our disadvantage specifically derived from this lack of differentiation. In hindsight, how many of you would have still taken the paracesis had you known what its true purpose was? And in that regard, this subtle guidance, well, had it not been given, would it not have completely changed everything? A real mind bender, especially if your brain already hurts from trying to establish who came first, the Tenno, the Drifter, the Lotus, or just the Hand. But what's Warframe without mystery, right? Nonetheless, the one thing that is made abundantly clear is that there's a plan. From Entradi's own words within his lost notes to even something as mundane as the information on the very volunteers that, whether willingly or not, make up the basis for the weapons he has deemed his champions, to supposedly combat the indifference. And he has kept a classified dossier of each member, offering a bit of background on those who, as far as we've been told, volunteered for the Protoframe program. In my opinion, within this information, he tips his cap in regards to some of his intentions and observations within the notes he's kept regarding all members of these Hex. For those that haven't seen these, I present them now. Leticia Letty Garcia. Codename Belladonna. Team role Medic and Strategist. Characteristics, habits. Observable paranoia, often seen surveying. Cracking knuckles, cricking neck. Reputation. An unflinching realist, far less occupied with personal problems than the others. Skilled as a medic, but struggles to connect with them emotionally. Special notes. Appears to be nurturing a colony of rats. Has named several of them. Letty's current Day 1 counterpart, Trinity, known for her own kind of three-point functionality, hence the name, and it would seem this protective nature spills over into a desire to care for not only the rest of the group, but also for a collective of rats. Her codename, Belladonna, may refer to her very nature, as this plant, genus Atropa, species Belladonna, is a poisonous plant that's been used in medicine for centuries, and is more commonly known as nightshade. Everyone remembers Nick Cage injecting atropine into his heart on Alcatraz Island, right? Well, that is derived from the Belladonna plant, with its genus name Atropa, meaning inflexible, much like how Letty is said to behave as an unflinching realist within this dossier. And her corresponding dialogue, offered during TennoCon, seems to mirror what Entradi already considered.
The boss says care for his sister. I care for his sister. As long as you still are his sister. And as long as I feel like listening to him. Never signed up for this. I'll be home, Mama. Your little girl doesn't end here. No te preocupes.
So Albrecht was obviously quite diligent in quantifying his subjects. We can see the same kind of situation well within every one of these entries. Amir Beckett, codename Jitter. Team role, technician, electronics specialist. Characteristics, habits. Often jiggling a leg or tapping a heel. plays handheld video games, checks watch obsessively, arcs electricity between his fingertips like cat's cradle. Reputation: reckless, fickle, and entirely unpredictable. Either a liability or a lucky rabbit's foot. We shall see. Special notes: known to avoid the use of vehicles in favor of running. Enters occasional states of extreme focus. Amir having the nickname Jitter is somewhat low-hanging fruit. Clearly, he has, well, many of the same problems I have. Restless leg syndrome. Loves electronics and video games. The major difference between the two of us being he was given super speed, mimicking that of his modern-day counterpart, Volt, and I was forced to take carpal tunnel syndrome as my prize. Life can be like that sometimes. While most of the notes that Entrati has written about him are pretty obvious in nature, one in particular caught my eye. That being arcs electricity between his fingertips like cat's cradle. This is derived from Kurt Vonnegut's novel, Cat's Cradle. The part in question refers to a passage in the book that reads, "For maybe 100,000 years or more, grown-ups have been waving tangles of string in their children's faces." Newt remained curled in his chair. He held out his painty hands as though a cat's cradle were strung between them. No wonder kids grow up crazy. A cat's cradle is nothing but a bunch of X's between somebody's hands. Little kids look and look and look at all those X's. And no damn cat, no damn cradle. Do you get it? At first, it appears as if this is just a reference to an act within the book, but in looking just a bit deeper, the story is set in a time when the narrator was contemplating writing a book concerning the day the world ended, set in the mid-20th century, and is said to explore and satirize issues of science, technology, the purpose of religion, and the arms race. Seems strikingly similar to our own upcoming situation, does it not? What's more intriguing is that the narrator eventually devotes himself to a new, secretly practiced religion, the sacred texts of which are written in the form of calypso songs. Caribbean-style music originated in Trinidad, and a form of secret language between slaves, brought there with the sole purpose of becoming an oppressed labor force. Many terms associated with this religion eerily match up with the supposed direction of Warframe in 1999 specifically. A Karas is a group of cosmically linked people. Za-Ma-Kibo refers to inevitable destiny. Sanukas are the intertwining tendrils of people's lives, all of which could easily be interpreted within Warframe's current narrative. Want more? Borasisi and Pabu were the sun god and the lunar goddess. Here, listen to this passage concerning the two. Borasisi, the sun, held Pabu, the moon, in his arms and hoped that Pabu would bear him a fiery child. But poor Pabu gave birth to children that were cold, that did not burn. Then poor Pabu herself was cast away, and she went to live with her favorite child. Again, with the right eyes, it does seem to portray a lot of similarities. This isn't the only direct reference we've been shown to a modern-day text either. The keen-eyed amongst you may have noticed a particular book on Aubrich's desk, titled MCMXCIX, meaning 1999. And while initially I believed this to be a quirky reference to the year itself, in actuality it's a book published in 2017 by Kara Walker. And listen to this, the book served as a portal between the real world and her imagination. That sounds familiar too, does it not? Now, I can't say for certain that this book is the one on his desk, but aside from having the same name and, let's be real, plausibility given the text was written in 2017, so if he can time travel, well, it really doesn't seem like much of a stretch now, does it? When 1999 finally releases, I can't wait to look into all the little details DE will be adding, as they really have stepped up their game in recent years in regards to the visuals utilized for world building. So in the upcoming quest, this will definitely be something to keep an eye out for. Now, Amir's Holvania text doesn't really uncover much, outside of a kind of inner dialogue regarding his fellow teammates, as well as references to his arc-charged abilities. Amir is clearly considered the little brother of the group, and appears to be treated as such by all of them.
Don't expect me to tell you what I've seen inside Amir's head. He's not a beautiful, broken marionette, and he's nobody's project. He's one of us.
Well, Amir's still alive. That's a win.
Amir! Remember to hydrate!
Eleanor? Are you there? Can you...
Oh, pick it
Can you
up.
give my brain a
Pick it
hug, please? Oh, thank you.
Well, except for old Quincy.
Amir is a weak boy. Like Auntie said, Doppy know who for frighten.
But apparently Quincy is that friend within the group that nobody likes.
Question. Could I take Quincy down if he turned on me?
I'm Quincy. I'm gonna blow out your kneecaps. Mercy, you'll be your ginger, boy.
Quincy thinks he's gonna wake up one night to find me chewing the flesh from his ribs. Maybe he's right.
I ought to get some headphones. Then I wouldn't have to hear Quincy work off all that surplus testosterone.
See what I mean? Quincy, the recently introduced Cyto-9 Frames 1999 counterpart, specifically known for its deadliness through munitions, is kind of a douche, at least from what we've seen so far.
Arthur needs to leave the Major to me, innit? Respect my methods. How many men have the ops got? Not enough to be taking me. Never.
The statement, "Duppy know who fee frighten, and who fee tell good night," is a Jamaican saying of some renown, essentially meaning bullies know who they can bully and who they best hold their tongue around, calling Amir someone he can essentially bully around. Again, douche, perhaps even douche canoe, you tell me. Quincy Isaacs, codename Stepper, team role, ranged fire support, sharpshooter, characteristics, habits, cocky, often places bets on his own shots, hand and trigger finger often observed flexing involuntarily, reputation, arrogance, sense of superiority is tolerated due to his impressive skills and sense of duty, would be a leader with more self-awareness. Special notes, expert gunsmith and ballistics specialist. Even Entrati had to add some of these very negative connotations to his profile, and it really does make me wonder if at some point we might not see Quincy betraying the group for his own endeavors, the extent of which being just as unknown. As if the members of the Hex haven't already had to deal with enough at this point. I mean, Entrati put this team together, and it begs the question, of all those within the plague year of 1999, were there really only 6 volunteers for essentially a cure and superpowers? Aoi specifically remarks,
Dear past, we finally got those superpowers we always wanted. What do you know?
and to me at least, there's yet again some confusion in my mind regarding the frames, their powers, and how they are derived. A kind of who came first, the Warframe or the Protoframe, and we'll get into that a little bit later because the answer is a bit more convoluted than you might think. Aoi Morihoshi, codename Chopper, team role, second in command, crowd control, characteristics, habits, bouncing on her heels, levitating, folding metal like origami, animating twisted metal marionettes and making them dance. Reputation, the heart to Arthur's head, a matriarchal figure to the group, protective, but with all the violent ferocity that can sometimes entail. Special notes, expert bike mechanic. Second in command, as well as the second introduced member, Aoi is their resident mechanic, and from what we can surmise, a partner of some degree to the one character we have been in the mind of. Literally, Arthur.
One day, Aoi. No more roadblocks and checkpoints. Just you and me and the bikes. Open road for miles. All this bullshit far away. I swear to soul.
Arthur needs to keep some fuel in the tank for himself. goddamn savior complex that man has.
Yo, Aoi, chill, hermana. Do something for yourself for once. Arthur ain't gonna blow away if you blink.
Aoi is, for the most part, a fun-loving and perhaps slightly immature spirit. One of the only other characters to portray some level of positivity within the group, aside from Amir, although he seems more innocent than necessarily positive. Amid all that's happened, she still seems to be able to stay loose. In fact, the only thing that is really concerning is her love of a particular group.
Nearly time for the online boys.
Given what's already been speculated about regarding what this song actually is and how it may in fact function, it does make you wonder if a lot of this group will fall into the same mental abyss the Warframes from our time are said to have, or if our interactions with them will allow for an altercation to occur without the loss of their general calm demeanor, perhaps even allowing for a physical transformation while keeping their minds intact to the same degree they are at the present time. Or if they too will at some point succumb to the infestation, as both Andrade has predicted, and potentially as Eleanor, the 1999 counterpart of Nyx, has also prophesized in a way. Speaking of, Eleanor, Nightingale, codename Salem, team role Psychonaut, stealth communications, distraction runner, psychological warfare monger, characteristics habits, possesses an impeccable memory, spiritually receptive, but interacts betterly telepathically than physically. Reputation? In a word, intimidating. Comrades wary of both telepathy and additional mutations. Spiritual insights may be of use. Watch this one. Special notes. Technocyte presence more pronounced than others. Eleanor is perhaps the most intriguing of the entire group for a number of reasons. First, as Andrade notes, the technocyte within her is more pronounced and thus is an obvious potential threat for, let's say, disloyalty or worse, and makes her selection within this group especially interesting. In fact, even she questions what Andrade was thinking.
I don't think Dr. Entrati expected me to survive. I had a lot more than just a cough. But survive I did. Letty has not forgiven me for it.
But maybe even more interesting is the fact that her specific skill set offers probably the most revealing aspects so far, with her psychic abilities allowing her to, unlike the others, know we're here.
I know you're there. I can feel you. It's okay. I won't tell the others.
But that's not all she can perceive.
I thought there were going to be two of you. Where's the other one? What on earth is a Mara Loke?
In fact, it seems she's often using her psychic abilities to interact with the others, even when they may not necessarily want that.
Stop sniffing around my head, Eleanor. If I want to talk, I'll talk.
It's odd that during the Whispers in the Walls, Arthur seems so confused regarding the Tenno being in their head, when it would appear this is a common occurrence amongst their little group. In fact, I think we can even piece together a dialogue Letty and Quincy have that's sparked by this very concept.
Being loved and being hurt? Yeah, I make no distinction. I knew someone once wired the same way. Kept me sane. And what of it? Te creyes voy acá, no? Get out of my head, Eleanor.
You with me, Eleanor? How deep in you go? See any friends?
¿Qué onda? The Lady Eleanor ain't no more freaky than last time you checked in. Less you know different.
Oi, lady! Grab your strap and let's go. Best of 5 buys the drinks.
Watch out, unless you're pissing blood right this second, whatever it is can wait. I got nothing to prove to you, Quincy. Go play your little games, Niño.
Don't mind the waiting. Plenty to be thinking about.
And then we have her take on the Lotus.
Oh, she's wonderful. Triple-faced goddess. There's a shadow on her, isn't there?
Lotus. Margulis. Natah.
We live, we rise, we endure.
And mind you, this was pre-Lotus Eaters, which I would say she seemed to one-up all of us, from millennia away. And it's with this mindset that her two last statements should be met with some trepidation. This is not the only prophecy she offers us. The first...
Blood? Oh, that's going to be a fight. Something... bursting. Cross swords. Arthur.
we actually see from the trailer.
Blood? Oh, that's going to be a fight. Something... bursting. Cross swords. Arthur.
But it's perhaps the second that is odd unless you consider what she's trying to express.
Oh, you are going to make such a difference this time around.
And it's with this statement that I made the argument in a previous video that we may have in fact done all of this before. Does this just pertain to what we are about to experience in Warframe 1999? Or perhaps the entirety of the Warframe timeline? And if true, begs to question how many times before did we not make a difference? And does she remember them all? These gifts allow her to very much live up to her moniker of Salem, an obvious reference to the famous Salem witch trials, another aspect of our real culture to influence this reality. Now, interestingly enough, even with all of this, Arthur still appears to be the key, maybe to this time or dimension, or perhaps even greater in scale, given he's the only one Entrati names in his lost notes.
As their loyal doctor, I have taken repeated samples from them. The sight of their technocyte-riddled cells mutating gave me fresh visions. I could take this material, work with it, forge new creations. Eagerly, I brought the samples back to Deimos and began to cultivate them. It was Lloyd who pointed out the singular attributes of the Grey strain, how it stimulates growth to monstrous dimensions. Many thoughts converged in me then. What if, through precise biochemical engineering, I could create the equivalence of Warframes, yet built to a titanic scale? Surely such a legion could stand against the adversary? Assuming, of course, that an operator could be found. Not long after, the first of my vessels took form. A giant to battle giants, merging the humanity of the man Arthur, the anatomical perfection of Ballas's Warframes, and the titanic potency of the Grey strain. My saviors.
Being synonymous with the vessel specifically. This leader of the Hex seems quite suited for the hero's journey.
Arthur Nightingale. Codename Broadsword. Team role leader and combat co-coordinator. Characteristics: habits, highly disciplined, professionally trained. Curiously, no known personal relationships beyond the others. Reputation, volatility, proven leadership, demonstrated selflessness, competent field command, yet still regarded as a loose cannon. Special notes: exceptionally loyal to his sister despite their clashes. This may prove problematic for group cohesion.
The most obvious reference, and one tied to his codename, is that of King Arthur of the Round Table, with Broadsword most likely being a reference to his weapon, both here and there, Excalibur. And if in fact Arthur is the first of the Hex to accept the Helminth transfusions from our time and become what we know as a Protoframe, it would also seem to take his rule over the group as being the first to use Excalibur, essentially pulling the sword frame from the infested rock. Arthur's quotes within Helvania aren't really too intriguing. Typical captain speak, if you will. But there's one thing he mentions that most of the others appear to agree with.
We'll find you, Doctor. That's a promise.
Don't look up, Doctor.
Aww. If they take Entrati out, who's gonna look after the mutant jaguar of his? Poor thing won't last 5 minutes in the wild.
Which brings up a point about the group that really can't be overlooked. Why are the Hex portrayed in Entrati's notes as his saviors, and yet they all appear to hate him? On the surface, this doesn't seem to match up in any way. First, every one of these individuals would have, by his own words, been infected with the technocyte to begin with, so one would assume they would look at him in a positive manner. After all, the posters on the walls all seem to depict him in a kind of Jesus Christ pose. And further, as was stated by his love interest, they were given the powers, at least some of them, seemed to fantasize about as younger kids, much like the rest of us, I'm guessing. I'm still holding out for mine personally, you never know. But given this, it really doesn't make any sense they would look at him in such a negative manner. I mean, Quincy downright threatened murder, so what happened? We've not been told if Entrati's samples were taken with the group's consent or not. And that's nothing to say of the method by which it was done and if it was painful or brought about any other residual effects. And I bring this up because we've already been a part of one of what seems to be those effects during Whispers in the Walls. While he doesn't seem to mind Eleanor in his head, he definitely notices we are not her. And when you add in some of the other situations also experienced in this specific scene, the appearance of the man on the wall, carefully hidden in the back of the subway, then showing up later using Entrati's avatar at the end of the scene, as well as the Indifference's connection to another of the vessels shown earlier in the quest, well, some rather disturbing possibilities make themselves not just present but also bordering on more likely. Given that we only see Aoi's and Arthur's blueprints within Netracells, can we assume that all the male vessels within the labs are grown from Arthur, with Aoi being the basis for the female ones we see? And does that make the two of them also susceptible to the Void entity, especially given its apparent ability to occupy the vessels in the same way we can, providing a kind of link to their 1999 consciousness? Or is the entirety of the group susceptible? Samples taken from each of the Hex we see here. What dangers has Entrati put them in? So much so that they would, from what we've been offered, want to see him dead. And have they already started experiencing some of these effects? In this regard, are they not incredibly volatile as well? No matter what his dossier says about Arthur, being exposed and potentially unleashed at really any moment by the Void or the Infestation, or both? Void-attuned technocyte warriors, whose loyalties are already beginning to slip. I just question whose side they consider to be the right one. Earlier in the video, I'd mentioned that unless we are offered specific information, these Protoframes and their existence before or after the actual Warframes is still a bit convoluted. Initially, it seemed fairly simple. Entrati brought Ballas's helmet strain from the future, administered it to these former soldiers already infected with the technocyte, and, well, with the right modifications, became exactly what the Netracells showed us. But if that's the case, is it just a crazy coincidence that Nyx and Excalibur share the same frame and are the only relatives within the group, brother and sister specifically? Were the two of them given specific serums for these frames, Excalibur and Nyx, or are these frames the basis for the ones we'll come to know? You might be wondering, how would that be possible? But then we have to remember Eleanor's quote.
Oh, you are going to make such a difference this time around.
And it puts into question where we are in Entrati's full plan. Is this the first time around for us? The second? The third? How many times have the Tenno or the Drifter failed? And if you really want to speculate, was there a time when either or neither of them existed? These godlike children appearing more and more manufactured and even educated in many different ways, sometimes in very specific moments to sway the fates to alter this timeline to produce a Tenno needed to operate the vessels and combat the Indifference. A Drifter to be able to rescue them from the Void, and a way to connect all of them back to his chosen army. And with all that in mind, how likely is it the Tenno are being led into some kind of trap? I suppose that's for all of you to decide. But with that in mind, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the Hex, and maybe have a better idea of what to expect especially if you were not able to make it to Halvania Mall during the week it was available. $19.99 is going to be a mind bender. I don't think there's any other way to see it. I just can't wait to get there. At any rate, I hope you all have a wonderful day today, a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk at you all in the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye.